One is the forest sector. We will be increasing our carbon stock in the forest from 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide by the year 2030. We have a goal in the power sector, so that we will be increasing the share of non-fossil fuel based energy in the total energy mix up to 40%. And then the third one is having the GDP, the emission intensity target. So we want to reduce the emission intensity by 33 to 35% by 2030. So these are the 2030 goals. Now India is working on a much longer term goal, which is called LTS, long term strategy. As you are also aware that India has taken the net zero goal. So in keeping all these requirements in mind, now I think in 2022 itself, the LTS or the long-term strategy goal may also be reported, and this is a very important thing. And these are the different institutions, as I said, that I'm just presenting on their behalf. There are a number of institutions that are involved in preparation of the national greenhouse gas inventory, and then not only looking at the greenhouse gas inventory, but also looking at what mitigation actions, what industry, government, and other players who are placed within the Indian geographical boundaries have taken in order to mitigate climate change, and what are the mitigation opportunities, etc. So a lot of modeling is also involved. I think going forward, the component of modeling will keep increasing more and more in our national greenhouse gas inventory. So this is a rough bird's eye view of the inventory, how India's greenhouse gas emissions as per the national greenhouse gas inventory that is being reported continuously has increased from year 2000. So you can see here that from 1.5 we have reached quite 2.8 or something. And also you can see that our forest sector, the land use change and forestry sector has remained thorough throughout a strong sink for carbon dioxide, giving some respite to our emissions. So you can see this is just birds. And now I compare our. So I was talking to Yogesh ji, and he said that it will be a good idea to compare our national greenhouse gas estimates with something that is internationally accepted and published, and people using that. So I have put here the figure that I just got from emission database of global atmospheric research, EDGAR, that is popularly known as. And you can see that the values that are reported in EDGAR are more or less not identical to what we are reporting, but they are very close by. The difference is only 10%, 10%. So I think this is, and you can see the breakup of different sectors here. However, while I'm showing this data from EDGAR, I also want to impress upon you the specialty about our greenhouse gas program. So you can see here that in our greenhouse gas program, different sectors are so while you look at the international data sets, etc., here they may be using the tier 1 methodology. They may not have country specific and other sector specific and more detailed emission factors and activity data sets. Whereas in when we create our greenhouse gas inventory within country and under such a large umbrella of project, then we try to ride the tier ladder. We try our best wherever possible. We want to get more detailed information, more granular information, more localized information, rather than just taking some default numbers that may be available. So just to give you, so you can see here that around 50%. So right now in the in BUR3, around 52% of the emissions that has been estimated have been estimated using higher tier methods, tier 2 or tier 3, and it has increased to 64%. So this is a consistent effort. We are not perfect. We are doing it for a very long period of time, and slowly we are building capacity. And I think this is discussion, the kind of expertise that we have here will be, I think, improving this further. And I think this is because I have come from the forest sector, I have put some specific slides from the forestry sector. However, this is not very important in the overall discussion. And here you can see the breakup, the sectoral breakup, and the greenhouse gas based breakup that has been reported in the BUR3, which is for the year 2016. That is the latest information that we have currently available with us. Now, this is a very important slide that I would like to draw your attention to, is that you can see here that which are the most, so after doing all the inventory, what is the purpose of doing the inventory? The purpose of doing inventory is to figure out, okay, where are our largest emissions coming from? Which are the areas where should we prioritize in order to initiate mitigation actions? So you can see here electricity sector by far has been the largest contributor, then the road transport, then enteric fermentation coming from the livestock, of course iron, steel, etc. are much later. So you can see just 3 or 4 sectors, 3 or 4 key activities are the ones. And if you see, this is just for the year 2016, and here you can see the average for the entire time series of 2011 to 2016. You can still see that the electricity production is by and far the largest contribution. Almost half of the contribution is coming from industry, road transport, and the electricity production in India. And hence I think we get an idea. So once you know where your emissions are coming from, then you can do something about it. You can prioritize, you can put some resources for that. And again, I think this slide I have already shown. So with this, without taking much of your time, I would like to conclude here. But the idea, this greenhouse gas inventory is not a one-time effort. It is a continuous effort, and this effort is going in a direction so that we ride the tier ladder. We are continuously improving on ourselves, and I think that is the answer for solving this problem. Thank you very much. That's
Yeah.
all I have from my side. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Rajiv. I think this is very important input, and then it will really trigger the discussion also, because the inventory, and then because the emission numbers you showed from BUR1, BUR2, BUR3, and then even till 2016. So it is seen that the major chunk of emission comes from the electricity production. So if we see the some of the reports, annual reports from the Central Electricity Authority by the Ministry of Power. So we see that in 2015, not in 2005, basically, the coal use, the power generation was basically was used by say 50% or 55% of coal that time. I mean 55% of power were generated by coal. But if you see the annual report recent, almost 69 to 70% of power is basically produced by using the coal. So as coal is basically major fossil fuel which emits atmospheric carbon dioxide. So this shows that, I mean, the situation is basically worsening. We are using much and much coal, and then we need a clean technology. We need a more mitigations part and these things. So these are important numbers, very important message you have given. So this is from the observational point of view, from the bottom up point of view. And I request if any other member, if you have any comment, otherwise we'll go to the next from, and we'll invite the modelers, because basically modelers need a precise and accurate inventories just to do the modeling. Okay, so Astrid, can you unmute and then ask question?
Yeah, so I had a question. So while I was going through the presentation, one of the things that were made was from 2004, we have inventory when it comes to GHG emissions. So one is what happened before that, and the second thing is normally we look at a baseline while we understand, GHG emissions over a period of time. So do we like consider 2004 as our baseline because we have data, or what is it? Is basically my question. Yeah.
Yeah, baseline may be different for different. Like for example, if you're talking about the NDC baseline, So of course, there for the two goals which are related to the power sector and the greenhouse gas emission intensity, there of course the baseline is 2005. However, the choice of baseline is not dictated by the fact of your historical data availability. So the choice of baseline may be an agreement between the international players. Maybe 2004-5 has been given as a baseline by many other countries. So taking as a reference, India is also taking that as a baseline. Maybe so. Yeah.
And maybe, if I can add, maybe the baseline has something to do with the Kyoto and Montreal protocols being put into play. That could be a possibility as well.
Yeah,
Exactly. It is dependent on the international requirements.
Yeah.
And I don't think so. The baseline is determined by the each country what they want to choose for the NDCs. It is not internationally recognized because so some country put like I think China putting at 2005 and Japan puts at 2011 or 12. So every country has their own choices. This is one of the problematic part for us to decide in terms of policies because in people if the country can choose and depending on the emission intensity, like how much emission you make per dollar of GDP, so then that choices becomes so different for different countries. It's getting very difficult for us to understand that in the equal footing, how do you tax carbon, for example? Because the different country has passed through a different historical progress in terms of industrialization. So that's I think one of the difficulty I see it in terms of choosing baseline and the flexibility given to the countries.
I completely agree to him. In fact, a lot of countries have 1990 baseline. For
Yeah.
example, Russia has a 1990 baseline. That
Exactly.
is so since 1990, if they so that's completely not useful actually. So all of us who are doing this kind of juggling up at the global level, we face a lot of these problems. So
Yeah.
but certainly baseline choice is not dictated by the availability of your BUR data sets, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have seen in many, triple C reports, and I have gone through recently. So they use 1990 as a baseline. So as Dr. Prabir said, depends upon different countries, different needs, and these things. So hope Astrid, I think your doubt is now clear.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So Pramit, you want to add something?
I wanted to ask a question to Dr. Chaturvedi. First of all, Dr. Chaturvedi, thank you for explaining us through this through your slide and highlighting the role of different components, specifically the electricity. So I just had a question. So you said on your last slide there has to be a hierarchy-based or tier-based computational strategy. So perhaps can you explain a bit more on that? What exactly do you mean?
Yes. Okay. So I'm not okay. So I have presented in on behalf. So I may not be the best person on the electricity part. Okay, but I can explain you the tier methodology. So tier one is the most basic methods. So maybe you have not done any serious study within your country, and you may want to use some default factors, which are available in the IPCC good practice guidance, etc. So these are tier one methods when you use default factors. Tier two method is when you use the country specific values. You have done some study, you have done research, you have labs, etc. And then based on that, you have computed your own greenhouse gas inventory. So that is tier two. Now, tier three is much more detailed. You have done maybe a sector-based modeling study, maybe in soil carbon, maybe in forest sector. So if you are taking data from there, from a detailed study, a modeling study, etc. So then that will qualify as the tier 3 method, and that is the most preferred method. In the absence of tier 3 data, we resort to tier 2 and tier 1. Yes, I think that's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
this is a very important point you raised about different tiers and then making an inventory, preparing it. But there is a gap between top down and bottom up. What modelers feel that the inventory which is basically available for the modeling, basically for the top-down modeling, are not very precise or have a lot of issues and these things. And then particularly if we talk about Indian scenario, so in India, if we use inventories in our top-down modeling, so we are using the global inventories, we are using the EDGAR, we are using many various other inventories. So where we stand, basically the Indian inventory makers stand, which who can provide basically accurate and precise inventory, and what exactly what modelers want, what kind of inventory they want. So that basically it will go. Yes, I'm coming, Dr. Prabir. So now it is your chance to open the discussion, and then please start your part of panel discussion and show your slides, please. Yeah.
Okay, actually, then I think it's time to move on. So let's.
Yeah,
I
but you can ask the question, then you can start, because this will give a
okay.
point of discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the my obviously not a question really, but the suggestion is that yeah, of course there is difference between the inventory and the top-down approaches we have, but I think what Rajiv clearly showed that we have enough information to make policy.
Hmm.
I think that's the key point to take home from here, that we know where to go and stop your emissions. I think that's the key message I would take from this slide, his presentation. And we have to go forward from here. Obviously, we can fine tune your things as you go find new things, new emissions, new way of stopping emissions. But
Yeah.
technology is continuously evolving. So today you might find that okay, my forest sector is easier to manage, but tomorrow you'll find that my electricity sector is easier to manage.
Yeah.
As that technology comes. For example, if you have a solar energy, the solar grid comes into play, you will find that the energy sector will become very, very efficient in very short time. So
Yeah.
such things. So so the key message is already there for us to act.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why this panel discussion is very important. We have involved our people from industry, like Persis here. He can tell about the mitigation strategies, and then after the BUR looking numbers and these things. And Dr. Karve is there, how environmental issues she is handling with, and then maybe Astrid will tell about what are the industry's effort in basically the carbon mitigations in India. So this joint effort is required. We agree with you. Okay, so the first part was basically the first objective, I guess, whatever emission inventory we have available. So that Dr. Rajiv showed. Now, in the second objective, the precise emission inventory requirement for greenhouse gases modeling in India, challenge and solution. Basically, this is what the modelers view it is required. So I request Dr. Praveer just to open the discussion and show some slides.
Can you see my slide? Yes. uh, so I don't have a great slate of slides for this. You can see my slides, right?
Yes, yes, we can see.
Yeah, so we do not have like, and I don't have like a very good summary for all the activities in here, but I will just try to show you few things and then we start discussions from there. So yeah, our group is basically involved with CG Kumar, Bhinu, Dhanya Lakshmi, and Santanu in this case. And I want to take you slightly back in the basics, back into basics, and basically what came out from the IPCC in this AR6, which is just published in 2020, a few months back, the final report. So what this slide basically says that our greenhouse gas concentrations are increasing very fast with time here. So we are around here 2020 here, and then you can see that in the recent times, for example, last 50 years, the increase rate has accelerated. And this is it's a global phenomenon. Wherever you measure on the earth, you find it, because all these species at least are living for 10 years once we emit to the atmosphere. So CO2 basically lives for 100 years, N2O lives 120 years, and methane lives 10 years. So there are why this is why the atmospheric modeling and atmospheric observations makes it so powerful that we can exactly track how much emissions are changing each year globally. But our effort obviously here is that we try to estimate also by sector but not always successful. But we rely a lot on the inventories, what is shown by previous speaker. And but we also go into different countries. Our interest is to go into different countries to see which country is contributing how much, for example, the fossil fuel emissions in totals. And so if you start from the world, we know it at the end of this value on the top of the this right hand panel plot. And then you can divide into Europe, Asia, America, and then you can go out and out into different countries. So these kind of numbers are with us to some extent. I would trust them at like 10%, 20% level, which is very good in terms of making policy, I would say. And then like our focus is to come up with the estimation from atmospheric viewpoint. And what we do in this case is that we put all the inventory emissions from the fossil fuel, for the forest section, for the biomass burning, for example, agricultural waste burning, and from the oceans, and put into model simulations we call atmospheric chemistry transport model. And we have observations, for example, shown as symbols in the black symbols in this time series plot, 1985 to 2020. And then we also have model simulations which is shown as a blue line here. So as you expect, we don't have our knowledge complete in terms of inventory development. So then we have a difference in the observations and model. So what we do in this case is that we then apply very few simple equations and you calculate the new fluxes, the corrected fluxes for each regions, which is shown as the map here. So we estimate 84 regions globally segregated, and there are 54 regions over land and 30 regions over oceans, and we can calculate the emissions, the corrected emissions. And this is what we call by inverse modeling, and we will be using the top-down model. And to tell you something like here, that we can start with any starting point, any inventories. In this case, we are showing two inventories for the global land fluxes, the extreme, the straight line at the top, and the solid gray line at the bottom. But this is the kind of coming from the inventories. But the moment we do inversions, like the top down, put in the atmospheric observations into the system, so then you can see that the uncertainty, the spread in the a priori knowledge becomes much more small, which means that our knowledge gain from the observation is very large, and we can actually understand these variabilities, how it is changing with time, and how much it is changing with time, and then for the land and oceans, and we can also do it for the different parts of the globe. We can separate them into every 5-year sector. For example, the global stock take, which is going to happen in 2023 for first time, with I think the in line with the third country contributions to the UNFCCC, is that they will take every 5 years of stock of the emissions, and also the, of course, other things, many other things in terms of global stock take for the financing and etc. etc. But in our case, it's like how much is the emissions and sinks changes for different regions. So here we divided the globe into 15 regions of land, and we can do also 11 regions of ocean, then the global things. And you will be probably most interested in the South Asia. So our estimations say that South Asia indeed is a kind of a weak sink, about 0.3, 0.2 petagram per year. And it is also consistent with what the previous speakers showed from the forestry sector. And this sink basically coming from the forestry sector mainly, because the agricultural sector is basically in a close balance, because we produce goods, we consume goods and food, and then the CO2 goes back to the atmosphere. So that does not come into the net sink on the surface. So what you see the net sink from the South Asia is coming mainly from the forestry sector, which is actually continue to grow with the carbon CO2 fertilization, with the climate and maybe more rainfall, or the management practices. And so we need to protect it, for example, for sure, as it gives us a lot of leverages on the emissions. And we also do that similar thing for the methane. Methane, you know that methane is like 30 times almost more radiative forcings compared to CO2. And in this IPCC, for the first time ever, we have able to separate the contribution of emissions from the wetlands, which is natural emissions, which is shown as a blue line here, and for the rest of the other things, which are coming from the anthropogenic sector. So we have assigned this increase in the methane concentrations in the recent times, particularly from the 2005 or so, which is increasing very fast again, is coming from the anthropogenic contributions. So, and you can of course then go in different regions to show. I am saying a few regions for the Asian countries here, that and you can show that the emissions are increasing at what rate and how much with time. And again, I saw that the blue line is the wetland emissions, which is like a natural emissions. They are not changing so much in any of the regions, but the anthropogenic emissions are actually changing, which is the major outcome of this recent IPCC and our own research in the last couple of years. And similarly for N2O, we also do the inverse modeling, and we show here the projection of IPCC is the many lines here, but also a top-down estimation, which is actually saying that the emission of N2O from the land is increasing faster than even IPCC projections, IPCC or projections, which means that our agricultural sector is performing very badly in terms of applications and utilization of nitrogen fertilization. Because if you use nitrogen fertilizers on the field, how efficiently you can utilize it in the cropping system. If you can optimize your nitrogen fertilizer use and the maximum benefit in the agricultural productions, then probably N2 emissions can be lower, but I think we are probably overusing it. So which means that our emissions are much higher than the IPCC projections. Here again, we can actually estimate how much of the emissions coming from which regions by atmospheric observations, and I think we have a very good confidence in terms of what we are getting there. Of course, I mean, we are not 100% sure, but I think the trends, we are very confident in what you get from the inverse modeling. And then, so I was also talking to our colleagues yesterday, and then they said what we should present in this case, we have, I think that eventually we need this kind of sectorial emissions produced by the bottom up and top down together. What we did about 10 years back in this recap 1, and now the recap 1 is ongoing. Basically, we probably will update this picture, but generally again, what is coming out from this is that the fossil fuel sector is a major emitters, and then the net biome productions which is happening in the forest ecosystems are the net uptake of CO2 in our Indian subcontinent, because we are doing a recap which is regional thing, so it's not country specific, but India is you can see that major part of the South Asia. So basically all the message you can get from India from this map is coming from 90% from Indian scenario. And so then so the recap 2, as I said, is happening, and we hope that it will give us better assessment of these things, and in the 1 or 2 years more. And then there's a lot of also activities. I could not put all the things together here because we want to leave the time for discussions. So there are studies going on in IITM and then in Trivandrum and in NRSC kind of places. And here is one slide showing that the activity of top down and bottom up estimations are also taking speed in India, and it is a very good sign. And then we are looking forward to close collaboration on that. I think we need more and more international communities to come together and study this thing together, because it's a global concentration, global emissions, because every country can give a number in NDC, for example, but eventually that everything has to add up to the global total emissions, because atmospheric concentration of these species globally are very well known. This is just an example here. You can see whether you measure from Mauna Loa, Hawaii, or you measure in Seychelles in our Indian Ocean, or you measure in Cape Rama near Goa. Everywhere the growth rate of CO2 is same. So that means that it's a global picture, and we need to have a consistency check. This is must in the going to happen in the global stock take, is that UNFCCC statistics and top-down estimations, everything has to come together and to give us a solid knowledge on what is happening in the global scale for the CO2, methane, and N2O emissions. But all these 3 species, because they're most dominant in the global warming in the past 50 years. So I just put some recommendation. We did not have much deliberations among the team members, but so I think this is a place we can start discussion and see what other things we want to put, or discuss more the details which are the most important of these items. I think with that I'll stop. You guys?
Yeah, thank you, Praveer. I think, yeah, you have given very important information about the global estimations as well as the estimation from South Asia and then from India. So just, I mean, I have a little, maybe you can enlighten on this. What exactly you require for your modeling so that, I mean, this inventory people can understand, so that you require this, and precise, this much accurate, and so that, I mean, it is suitable for the modeling, so that you don't go, you use at least Indian inventory.
Yeah, so just as you also know, and then also spoken before, is that we are using the international inventories from the. I think Edgar is our first choice because Edgar gives the all three inventories: CO2, methane, and N2O, all the major greenhouse gases. So this is how we go to Edgar. But then there is also like a, mm, I would say that the because it's coming from one inventory system, so if one inventory is like if CO2 is wrong, then methane is going to be wrong, N2 is going to be wrong, because there are some co-emissions. For example, the coal sector, the coal mining. So methane emission come from the coal mining, and CO2 emissions from the coal consumptions. The two different things. But even they are coupled because then they are assuming that the amount of coal you burn has to come from the similar amount of digging of the coal mines. So I think this is why the country emissions statistics become very important, because then they look at the each things individually. Where the coal mines, how much are you mining coal in the country or importing from outside, and how much are
Yeah.
you consuming, how much you are burning. So this is where the tier 2 has to come. The tier 1 does not care about like many things. They just take the energy statistics and extrapolate to the all emission sectors. The tier 3 and tier 3 should be 2 and 3 should be looking into this specific statistics from each country. This is where I think the major improvement will come and will help us.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
Dr. Raj. Yeah, please.
yeah, and then for our inverse modeling, we can actually use anything and we can come up with one emission numbers, because that gives a total number, basically the total emissions. But then each sectors we can actually now dissect into and go into details, saying that what sector contribute to how much. And it has been very good progress in for us in the last, at least when I was working in 2010, I think it was not so good situation, but I think because our inventory and emission top-down estimations, people keep talking sometimes. So the improvements have been seen in the reflected in the emission inventory, even in Edgar. So things are improving, and but I think the country statistics are going to be still very critical. And then the third national communications, which is going to come soon, and the global stock takes will probably further enhance and then improve our knowledge, which
Yeah,
we are looking forward to.
yeah. You said that South Asia is a weak sink. So how, what is the uncertainty in this? How much uncertainty it is?
The uncertainty is quite big, as you see from this slide. But I think that we are still in for the top down. This is the top down estimation here. And this is the bottom-up estimation here from the by when you run the ecosystem models or take into account the forestry statistics.
Yeah,
So the inverse models give the if you take the mean of the inverse models, you get very similar number. But our inverse model estimation in itself basically tells that it can be like a near neutral to bit stronger sink.
yeah,
So the uncertainty is quite large, but we are kind of a similar knowledge that, and we have done inversions using the observations over India for some times, obtained from the aircraft observations.
yeah.
So that also suggests that there is kind of a net sink of CO2 over India.
Okay. I
Sir,
think that's a good news. Yeah, yeah, Rajiv, please. Yeah.
I have one question, quick question here. Thank you very much. I have been listening to you, and it is very interesting, and I learned a lot. Just one quick question, sir. This top-down, so the paper has been published in 2013, isn't it? So it may
Yeah,
need,
this one, yes.
yeah. So do you have any more recent data on this?
Yes. So like I showed you this one. So this goes up to like in 2020. So our this CO2, methane, and N2O all emission goes up to 2020.
No, but so what is the message here for the sink, carbon sink in the forests?
It is still continuing. So here, if you see this in this is the South Asia region. Can you see my slides?
Yes, but it's very, very small. Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Yes.
South Asia. Yes, I can see. I can see
The
South
South
Asia.
Asia region. So, and then they're like an it's for 4 decades here, 4 5 years blocks.
Yeah.
So 2001 to 5 and 16 to 20, like that. And South Asia is here. So
So
we
looks like it's
generally
increasing.
estimate to be
The sink is increasing over the years. Is that the message?
maybe a little bit, but I would say that at least we are in the sink levels. We are not going to the source level.
Yes.
And it seems it's increasing, and we understand that it should happen because the atmospheric CO2 concentration has increased by 20 ppm in the past 20 years, at least 20 ppm,
Yeah.
which means that your CO2 fertilization or the water efficiency in the in forestry or the ecosystems increases because CO2 forests are happy to assimilate carbon when the more carbon is available in the atmosphere. We call that CO2 fertilization. So such feedbacks can increase the CO2 sink, and also maybe management practices because you can okay, do not remove forest so that forest itself become a more and more sink because they can store more carbon in the stems and roots.
And the mean value remains close to 200 million tons, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. Okay.
Doctor,
Yeah. Thank you.
I have a question, sort of a request for the scientific community. Our concern is around the IPCC data that has been published, and more lately in the AR6. Our concern is that there are various sinks that have now turned into sources of CO2 and CO2EX. And I believe that there is a big anomaly because the IPCC data, a lot of it is multi-decadal. And as you very correctly enlightened, I think it's very important that if I were the chairman of a corporation, and if you required my corporation to be successful with any initiative that we are going to create, I need to have current data on my table. Otherwise, I cannot deal with the problem. And we are seeing consistently that the Amazon, for instance, has turned into now a source which is emitting close to 2 gigatons of CO2. We have the Arctic, which is now emitting close to 3 to 4 gigatons, both of CO2. We are not considering methane and N2O. And this is the major concern now that we have. And I think it is upon the scientific community to impress upon the IPCC that their data must be to time and not multi-decadal. Because if it's multi-decadal, we cannot solve the problem on hand at all.
Yeah. Prabir, can you
Yes.
please answer?
So in actually in IPCC we also give the time series nowadays. And for example, this one we took it from IPCC report, and then I just took it from IPCC report, and I part of the chapter 5 where you talk about the greenhouse gases. And we are having a parallel effect, which is IPCC comes once in sometimes 10 years for this time, for example. But then we also have a activity called under Global Carbon Project. So here we try to update these budgets sometimes every year, sometimes every once in 2 3 years. And our publications, like we keep publishing these papers. It just came out, or we're going to come out. It's in press. Will come out in maybe today or tomorrow. That we keep updating these fluxes, and we are actually producing this in the global scale. So you can also see that the Amazon forest here, that is kind of Brazil is included in this plot. So our emissions estimations are given for every year for every region. So, and this is what we try to help them or work with the global stock tech community and the UNFCCC. And there are many activities now being prepared by UNFCCC and towards global stock tech. We have a meeting coming up in Geneva in September, I think. So,
Yes.
so
Yes.
everything is going on, but then it takes time, like that for our inverse modeling, for example, we need a emission inventories until the recent times.
Yeah.
But if you saw from the Rajiv's talk, and then the emission inventory come up to 2016 or something. So we basically do our own extrapolations to continue inversions, which is not a correct method, but
Yeah.
this is what we are forced to do given that, so the emission inventory people are lagging behind, and we have to move on because atmospheric observation comes instantly with every year update. So we continue to do these kind of things, and we sometimes talk, but not so frequently as we wish, and hope that communication will continue and improve and be more frequent.
Yeah, Rajiv, can you give your limitations? Why?
Yes. So 2019 inventory is coming. Within months, it will be published. But we cannot go beyond 2019. For example, let me give you one simple practical limitation for me. For example, I'm creating the forest sector greenhouse gas inventory. Right now, ICFR 2021 is the latest one that has been published. And ICFR, which is Indian State of Forest Report by Forest Survey of India. So that report will contain data only till 2019. So
Yes.
I cannot, even if I try my best, if I have all the greatest of intentions, I cannot go beyond 2019. That is the cutoff for me.
Yes, yes, yeah.
This is the kind of, so this is just one limitation. There are many other limitations for other colleagues.
Yes, yes, we understand.
I can understand, but what I'm trying to say is that is there no way that this process can be sort of speeded up and evolved? Because as we see just now, the AR6 says 1.1 is the mean planetary increase. We have understood clearly from the other scientific community that it's as high as 1.35. So if it is 1.35, we don't have much time before we transgress the 1.5. And so the entire net zero model and all goes out of hand
Yes.
completely.
We are losing your voice, I think.
Yeah, Persis. Yeah. Please continue, Persis.
Yeah, so no, so I just thought that if there is some way where you could engage more proactively with, like even for the forest department, the data that comes in, if there is some technology which can, keep it instead of 2019 benchmark to try and make it at least 2021 immediately, I think that's going to give us much more time to if there is a problem of source, sink becoming source, to deal with it. If you're going to wait for 5 or 10 years, I think it's going to be too late to act on the problem.
Sir, I completely agree with you, and I completely agree with you. And we have been thinking about it. Solution is there. We can publish provisional data sets,
Yeah.
provisional, based on satellite-based assessments. But those satellite-based assessment has to be ground-truthed and has to go through the process of. So there are competent authorities, etc. So I agree with you. So some provisional numbers can be given out simply based on satellite data and simply based on top-down sort of approaches. And
Yeah,
these
sorry.
numbers may be
Important. It would be important because even in the corporate world, you have a provisional balance sheet. So if we can have a provisional account from you, it would help a lot of the scientific community working to address the issue. I think it's fantastic what you said.
certainly. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
It is very much required. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So, Pramit, before coming to you quickly, I wanted to go to other models we have, Dr. C.G. Kumar and then Vinu.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Dr. C.G. Kumar has recently done inversions using Lagrangian modeling, and he is developing basically the ecosystem modeling also. So, Dr. C.G., can you give your comments about the initial inventories you have used and the challenges and exactly what you think about the solution?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Yogesh, for giving the opportunity. And Dr. Patel has nicely briefed how the modeling community require what other things. As he told that the two important things requiring for the inverse modeling is the prior fluxes or inventory-based fluxes and the observations. At present, we are lacking these two, as the observations, also accurate observations over the greenhouse gas over India is limited to some one or two places only, pockets only. and the availability of data also limited. And another thing is that inventory-based fluxes. Basically, the inventory-based fluxes depends mainly on the international community like EDGAR or ODIAC. Those type of inventory based only. Even though India is producing the inventory, that is the total sectoral based inventory only. It is not like a special distribution or a gridded data kind of inventory. If that people who are preparing the inventory, if they can produce like a special distribution of the inventories, so it can be used for our inverse modeling purpose. At present, I think it is on sectoral basis total inventory only we are getting. That is one requirement we may have to use our inventory for the inverse modeling. And another thing is that we have found that even that biospheric flux also, there is a large discrepancy between the available inventory-based fluxes. For example, you are using that CASA model, there is a large discrepancy. Even the monsoon season also, it acts as a Indian region acts as a source, it shows. And the Fluxcom, another inventory-based available for this biospheric flux, that also shows that it is not matching with our actual observations from the, we have some observations, flux observations nicely from this our forest areas, and we try to compare with that observations. There is a large difference between this observations and the available inventories. So we also try to model ourselves to what are these biospheric fluxes to correct this inventory also. The one request from the I made is that if we can prepare our own inventory-based things, particularly for this emissions in a gridded base, so it can be used for this inverse modeling purposes. So we can use our own inventory for our inverse modeling.
Yeah, Vinu, do you want to add in this?
Yeah, I of course I completely agree with Dr. Prabir and Dr. Siji was pointing out. See, at the moment, our emission inventories are severely inadequate in any level of modeling the high frequency observation, and this has to be leveled. But right now we do not have a plan how to, but there has to be some way around. The other thing is that probably we could also think about having some kind of a virtual center where the partnership of this industry and various stakeholders and various ministries. So they share in this virtual center the information to researchers as well as to the industry and get an update of how the inventory can be improved and exchange communication so that we all are keep informed how the research community grow in their knowledge and how the inventory being collected will pass on to the research community for further research. Such kind of a nexus would be great in the nation. Yeah. I don't think we have such an effort. So now MOEF works in their own way of developing inventories, and MOES and other institutes work on their modeling or any research activity. So there has to be some kind of a coordinated effort to all this. Probably not in this year or maybe next 5 years we could target something like that. So it will, it will help us to grow much faster in this inventory puzzle. That's what I would like to highlight.
Yeah, thank you. Pramit, you can ask quick question, then we can go next session. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So thank you, Pravita, for this nice talk. And as you have pointed out that the sink of CO2, the carbon sink over South Asia is not very strong. And also it had been pointed out by Dr. Chaturvedi earlier, what are the different sources and sinks. So I just wanted to ask both of you, even to all the panel members, one point. So that is regarding the soil carbon sequestration. Because there is an initiative globally, that is the 4-card wheel, that we can put some carbon in the soil to hold it for a long time. So how do you think that can help us? Because South Asia, we have quite a good stretch of, or far, like wide stretch of agricultural land and forest land. But the soil carbon sequestration initiative or its study, that there is not much initiative in that direction. I have personally not come across many studies or many initiatives in that direction. So do you think, and Prabir, you mentioned regarding the carbon and nitrogen, accounting of carbon and nitrogen together. So I think you somehow wanted to explore the biological aspect of this, right? The biological aspect of carbon and nitrogen cycle. So can you share your comments on this?
So if I may just interject, and I think Priyadarshini would support me, I think biochar, which has been used for centuries, is one of the low-hanging fruit solutions for CO2 sequestration into the soil. And the easiest way to do this is when you can create this from your agro waste, convert it into biochar, which is inert carbon, very rich in soil. It not only enhances the CO2, but also increases the water retention capacity, not in all soils. It depends whether it's alkaline or acidic. But it also, while producing the biochar, you can create a syngas, which helps the energy sector and the poor farming community of India as well. This is something that Priyadarshini and I think we worked on this over 10 or 12 years back. I think it's something that can be promoted.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Prasis. Yeah,
Yes.
yes, Pravida, yeah, Pramit, you're mute.
Why I also emphasize on the carbon. I fully agree with what Parsis said, and also Priyadarshini ji was also mentioning that I think biochar is one of the potential carbon sequestration method, and also we have seen the other effect of air pollution reductions by making biochar. Like we a lot of agricultural wastes are burnt on the field. Instead, we can actually convert them to biochar. That also helps us in the air pollution co-benefit. You can think about co-benefits of making biochars and in the things. So I fully support and agree with that. On the carbon nitrogen cycling on the soil, and is that yes, because as I mentioning that N2 emissions is actually is going fast, much higher than what IPCC was projecting for the AR5, or even much higher than the AR6 projections, which means that our management of the nitrogen fertilizers in the soil, in the agricultural soil, is not optimized. So that is our feeling. We still do not know, and so IPCC gives a factor of 1% emission of N2O from the nitrogen fertilizer applications. But if you go to different ecosystems, they are actually varying differently. For the European ecosystem, I am just told that it's about 0.2% emission of N2O from nitrogen fertilizers. And if you see that in N2O emission from the Europe, it's actually going down with time, because I think probably that they have optimized how the way they apply nitrogen fertilizers, how they manage their agricultural agricultural growth cycle. So when you apply and how you apply, so all these things I think has a potential to improve or get benefit out of the our fertilizers used, for example, as a fertilizer nitrogen on the soil. So and then it can improve your agricultural productions. It can help the farmer to save on the fertilizers and how much they apply on the soil. If you can do this kind of country specific research and come up with the optimization on such things. Then also it's the any excess carbon and nitrogen you also, like I putting here in this bullet point, is that goes to the river system, right? So that the river system also comes into big play, because we actually export about maybe 40 teragrams of carbon to the river, to the actually to the estuaries, to the coastal oceans. And you also have seen that a lot of nitrogen from the agricultural land also ends up in the coastal zones of Arabian Sea, which is NACB's results from NIO. Very high profile papers came out from the, and it actually leads to more N2 emission from the coastal emission, coastal zones, because the N2 from the this land goes to the coastal oceans. So a lot of management is needed for the carbon nitrogen systems.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Dr. Karve, Dr. Priyadarshini.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of points I wanted to seek clarification on one, and also add a few things about biochar. What is the difference? I mean, we have this fashion nowadays of tree plantation drives and plant billion trees and million trees here and there. I have always been advocating that ecosystem restoration is a more effective way of carbon sequestration than these tree plantation drive. But how do we get that message out there in a more effective way? That's number one. Have there been any studies that certain area under tree plantation versus natural ecosystem, what are the carbon sequestration potentials, etc.? If there is anything like that, I would like to know about that. As far as biochar is concerned, yes, a very effective tool both to deal with air pollution issue, carbon sequestration, and also by adding biochar to the soil, we are improving soil fertility. So that reduces fertilizer requirement and improves crop yields. So there are additional benefits from food security and carbon mitigation point of view, and perhaps the nitrogen issue also may be dealt with. But one important factor to remember here is that decentralization is very important, because if we are going to have tons of waste being transported and to produce tons of biochar, then we are going to burn a lot of diesel to transport agricultural waste. So one has to look at the total life cycle of even the biocharing process and ensure that the process itself is carbon neutral. So doing it in a decentralized way, I think, is a very, very important factor there. And that has additional benefits of local income generation and livelihood generation. So I think there are multiple benefits to by pursuing the biochar processes, both from mitigation perspective and from I mean, if you have local livelihoods dependent on climate friendly technologies, that's also an adaptation strategy, which is also important for India, because we are among the top 5 most vulnerable countries to impacts of climate change. So I think from that perspective, this particular issue needs much more policy support than what it is getting right now. So that's one point I wanted to make.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Dr. Priyadarshini. So now I think we have heard from the researchers about the inventory preparation, about the modeling, about the requirement.
Sir, can I ask a question to Dr. Kadve regarding this
Yes.
biochar, what she was explaining?
Yeah, Pramit, ask the question.
Yes, Dr. Kadve, very thank you for this nice explanation on the biochars. So I just have a query, and pardon me if I am asking you something stupid because I don't belong to this field. So is the entire cycle of these biochar, as you had pointed out, like entire life cycle of the biochars, is that self-sufficient enough for a country like India? By what I mean actually, from its generation to totally support our agricultural system, not to reduce the yield. We cannot reduce the yield. We cannot manage that to happen, right? Cannot allow that to happen. So can we have a self-sustainable system of biochar with its all its impacts on the environment, on the sustainability, on the agricultural production, the economy, all taken together, all like addressed together?
Well,
So biochar is not a replacement for fertilizers. It's a soil improving agent which reduces requirement of fertilizers. So that's important to remember. And it doesn't work in all soils. Also, there hasn't been enough work done on standardization as to when to apply biochar, how much quantity for each crop in each agroclimatic zone. So a lot of work still needs to happen. But that's exactly my point, that this seems to be a very, very promising way forward. We need a lot of policy support for research and development, for implementation in the field, for data collection to really assess its effectiveness under different conditions. So there's a lot of missing information still, but there are studies, fragmented studies appearing from different parts of the world, which point that this is worth pursuing. That's the main issue.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Priyadarshini. I think let us go in next session, because at the end we will have a comment from each experts. So we have heard from researchers, from the observation people, what exactly we have, what exactly we are doing. Now I wanted to go to Dr. Priyadarshini Karve, and then Persis, and then Astrid also, just to ask about the activities they are doing, about the control and mitigation strategies. What is the current status? What is the future aspects? Yeah, can you please, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So if I think, I mean, if somebody is sharing the screen, can
Yes,
stop.
I am doing that. I think I need to go out.
Yeah.
Is I'm
Uh,
still sharing
anyway,
or I
I
stopped?
don't
Yes.
I don't have
Ye-
slides. I
I
will
have
just
stopped.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah,
Please, yeah.
I'll just talk about what we are trying to do here. So it was very interesting to listen to all the work that is happening at a very high level for emission inventories. My group and I, we are working in a bottom up approach, so to say, because what happened is I was approached by a small IT company in Pune, and that is what got me into this. They were asked for carbon accounting data by their client abroad. Uh, in order to continue being a service provider for them, and that is what made me realize that even if big corporations decide that they want to do their carbon inventories and carbon accounting and report on that, they need a lot of data from all their service providers and clients to give a really accurate picture, which means that capacity needs to build for carbon accounting at a small scale and micro industry level, which currently is non-existent. So from that perspective, I designed a basic course on carbon accounting, where we are trying to get mid managerial level people. The basic idea here is that just as everybody working in a business is more or less aware of financial accounting principles and factors that into the business decision, similarly they should be aware of carbon accounting principles and factor that in the business decision, with the idea that the business should consistently keep on going towards carbon neutrality or reducing its overall carbon emissions. But for that to happen, we need to have that internal capacity, because currently what is happening is businesses, because of either their clients are demanding or some the owner decides that they want to go carbon neutral, but they then hire some external consultants to do the job for them. But if there is internal capacity within the professionals working in the business, then this becomes part of the work culture and the overall DNA of the business, and it also becomes easier because then you know exactly what kind of data is going to be required, so you start maintaining that data. So even if an external auditor comes, you will be able to give them better quality data and therefore get a better picture of carbon accounting of your business. So from that perspective, this is one activity that we started. Secondly, I also realized that there is no university or college syllabus is offering courses around climate change going beyond just basic awareness raising. So we have started one activity which we called carbon neutral campus, which is a participatory activity, in the sense that I mean, there are many people who educational campuses are going carbon neutral, but that is happening by somebody coming in and telling them that you install rooftop PV, you do this, and then your total emissions will reduce to zero. But what we do is we work with a group of faculty and students in on that campus, uh, handhold them through making a baseline carbon accounting of that campus. They themselves will then come up with a action plan to take the campus towards carbon neutrality over a certain time period, and we will help them with advisory support. So that again, it's the same idea that carbon neutrality becomes part of the culture of that academic campus, and then the students who are studying in that setup will go out with that culture in whatever professional environments they go out to. And that is also another way of getting this basic understanding of carbon accounting and factoring it into decision making in businesses. So these are the two main initiatives which are focused on business and industry. Apart from that, I have developed a very simple personal carbon footprint calculator, and we do workshops for common citizens around that. Once people use their own electricity, fuel, etc. data to get a sense of their own carbon footprint, that changes the conversation. They become more serious about understanding climate change and mitigation strategies in their day-to-day lives also. So that is the third thing which we are doing, mainly to build awareness among urban Indian citizens. So these are some of the things that I'm currently involved in.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kavi. I mean, you are doing really, I mean, great initiative you have taken just for the carbon mitigation. I'll give you just a small example. We have one scientist in IITM. His name is Dr. Milind Majumdar. So he has basically initiated the cross ventilation in houses and then homes. And he actually he was in media many times. Even in his office also, what he has done, I mean, he has used some just exhaust fan one side and then one fan one side so that the room temperature decreases. And then in his home also, he did like that. So he never uses air condition, or maybe always fan is not required. So this kind of things are there in the scientist mind. I have given just one example. Okay, I'll come to Persis. Persis, can you just add in that what Dr. Karve said, and then about your plans, works, and future aspects?
Yogesh, can I just put one comment
Please,
before we move
please,
on
please.
this one?
Yeah,
I
please.
said, yeah. So, Prashanji, I think your point is very good and valid. But then, what I am thinking, like I live in Japan, right? So I see the things differently. Uh, we can do all sorts of things at the personal level, but I think that the government policy, that has to come much more in the front.
Yeah.
For example, you cannot make a house livable unless you have a planning in building it. If
Yeah.
you
No,
just cramp all the cities,
yeah.
if you just cramp all the cities with the high-rise buildings
Yeah.
next to each
Yeah.
other, like with 1 meter distance, there is no way you can pass air through your ventilators.
True. I agree with you. And in fact, that's one of the things that we cover in our workshops. That, I mean,
Yes.
policies will change if citizens demand. So, for example, if I want to reduce my personal carbon footprint, I need good public transport system in the
Yes,
city.
exactly. So I
So I
mean,
need to demand for that. So those are also the things that we highlight, that individual action only gives me a moral right to demand certain things from my local, state level and national policy makers. So that's exactly the messaging that we are giving.
yeah, we need to frame that thing like it has to go to. I mean, this policy has to happen in the municipality level and the government. I mean, the state level and city level. I mean, that has to happen because if you like build everything now in 10 years, then we have no way to remove that in next 50, 100 years.
Yeah.
You're stuck with that
True.
for next 50 years. That's the seriousness of this. I think the issue. I mean, it's very nice point. But how we can get that there?
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
It's hard work, but
It's very hard work.
started
I understand.
slowly.
It's very hard work, but then we need to find out ways, channels. For example, the television or somewhere that it has to like go to people's mind that all these like people who are sitting in the big offices listens to this. I mean, they they feel the responsibility with them.
Yeah.
Unless they feel the responsibility, we are not going to move very far.
Yeah. Actually, we should convey such kind of message. What I agree with Praveen, to our young generations, to the schools, to the small kids, and teach them such kind of things. So this is really required, but it will take a lot of time, as Dr. Pridarshini says, and then it requires a proper policy and these things from the policymakers. Yeah, Persis, you want to just continue this?
Yeah, thanks. So my focus is actually going to be on three aspects. It's going to be the work that I'm doing currently with my global team at Cambridge, and that is intervention, repair of the climate. And for me, as far as my country, India, is concerned, I am extremely concerned and worried about the food security angle, and that's where agriculture and GHG mitigation come in. Now, I would just like to start off with a basic understanding. You all are all scientists, and you would know that 1 part per million is equivalent to approximately 8 gigatons of CO2. If we want to get to PIB levels, which is pre-industrial levels of CO2, that's 350, we need to remove approximately between 70 to 110 parts per million of CO2 from the atmosphere. I'm not even talking about CO2 Now, if you assume companies like Climeworks, Orca, which have set up plants in Iceland, who are saying that the cost of removal is about $100 per metric ton, to remove approximately 900 billion tons of CO2, you will require approximately $90 trillion. I repeat, $90 trillion. Now, I am saying this to put everything that we are doing in context. A, is this achievable? Maybe yes, but we first have to wake up and define the problem on hand. Is everything that we are doing going to even narrowly come close to this? COP26 says we need to draw down 1.9 gigatons per year of CO2 going to 2030. They haven't even added the sink to the source of the Arctic, the Amazon, the ESAS, the East Siberian Arctic Shelf, etc., etc. So let's first define what the objective is, where we want to move forward. So I've laid this all down to you in terms of numbers. Now I come to the next point of India. We have committed 2070 net zero. What is the definition of net zero? I want to ask each scientist, please. Can we define a net zero? That's number one. If we can define a net zero at 2070 or 2050 or 2030 has no meaning at all to me and to a lot of the scientific community. Then coming to the agricultural aspect for India, I believe, and so does a lot of our global team members, that there are going to be exponential food famines happening in the next few years. It has already started. Food inflation, food famine is going to happen. Now, India, which is largely a 70% agricultural economy, the GHG levels, I was just studying reports of agriculture, are approximately around 14%. Out of 14%, about 50 to 55% is enteric fermentation, which is digestive systems of animals, husbandry, etc. 20% is from the production of rice, which is a staple for most Indians. And 20% comes from fertilizer applications. Now, for me, my favorite topic is rice, and I didn't know that the topsoil of rice cultivation emits 99% of methane. It doesn't come from the subsoil, but it comes from the topsoil. Now, if I were in the place of the agricultural community and agricultural scientists, and I have worked with the ICAR team at PUSA for various initiatives, I would like to question, should not our focus be on creating more efficient and productive rice yields, but at a lower level of GHG emissions? And how is this going to happen? I know that Japan and China have got technologies which can combat this in terms of intermittent irrigation, mid-season drainage, new types of variants, DRS, what's known as direct seeding. So there are methods. Now, my view is that in order to be food secure as a nation of 1.2 billion or 1.3 billion in 2023, they're saying we will be the largest populated area surpassing China. My major concern as an Indian is how am I going to ensure that my population will get adequate food supply and yet contain the GHG levels? And I do believe one thing, that it is not fair for the developed countries who have spent billions and billions and have enjoyed themselves at the cost of us as a developing country, and now they're putting pressure that we have to limit and curb our GHG levels. So I tell them, if you've got the technology, you provide it to us free of cost. Let us supply it and then move forward. And then you can really walk the talk. They have given commitments to give money to us for new technologies, for decarbonization, and very little of that has trickled down. And so I firmly agree with our Honorable Prime Minister that in order to achieve this, I think the 2070 is very good, because in short, he has said that net zero is not important for us. We have to make sure that our citizens and our country is secure at our levels. So this is the message I would like to give to all of you in the panel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Persis. I think this is a very important issue you have raised about the food security. And but with the new technologies, for example, for the rice you're talking, I think in the ICAR there's some research done. I think from it might add in this, using the warm water or something, they can reduce the methane emissions, and this kind of such kind of techniques are there. So it is going on. Maybe I think this food security and then greenhouse gases both has to be taken care of. So new technology is required. So I will go to Astrid. Astrid, can you add about the mitigation strategy? Because see, Voltas and many other companies like you, they are making air conditions, they are making refrigerators and these things. So basically you are adding some technology to the public, but at the same time, what mitigation activities, what kind of control, greenhouse gases control activities are there from the Voltas or maybe from other companies' side? Do you have any idea?
So, to be honest, no, in terms of if you look at greenhouse gas emissions of a typical air conditioning or a refrigeration organization, you will find the scope 3 bit of it extremely high, because as you're aware that in the use phase, our product consumes extremely high amounts of energy as compared to the other appliances at your place, right? So we realize that as the temperature increases, obviously the demand for cooling would increase. The other thing is that we were talking about food security, wherein Voltas is also into commercial refrigeration. So we're also trying to use this to kind of help us understand the ways and means of how can we work on food security, not only for high-end industries, but also these small-time shops and vegetable owners, in terms of what can we do. So we are working on that. In terms of mitigation, one, in terms of our factories, we're trying to move towards renewable energy. Like our corporate office is completely on renewable energy, and one of the factories is almost 30-40% on renewable energy. But for me, the worry has always been, so the scope 1 and the scope 2 is something that we have control over, right? Because these are the things that they basically are our operations, there are offices. So we have kind of some control over it, where we can manage a lot of things. But the worry comes with the scope 3, wherein especially the use phase or the logistics is the most worry. Because if you look at data, like if you look at the market data, obviously a 5-star AC would any day be more energy efficient than a 3-star, right? But the issue with our products is because it's again high priced as compared to the other appliances in your house, and it is often considered a luxury. Right now, obviously, people are moving on to buying an air conditioner, but it's still a luxury, we've seen. And so yes, there is a price factor involved, which makes it difficult for people to always buy or always choose a 5-star. That being said, we are trying to work on, obviously, with the BE on energy efficiency, trying to reduce further energy consumption of air conditioning. We're trying to get in the health aspect, wherein we're putting in filters, to like HEPA filters, which help, filtrations of air in because of the high pollution that we have. That's one thing that we're doing. We're also working on having more greener refrigerants because that's an issue too. So, like the whole world is moving from R22 to R32, we are also trying to see anything that has absolutely no GWP or ODP. So that's something that we're working on. We have some green refrigerants, but the problem is with the humidity that we have, in India, in most areas. So that becomes an issue, a safety hazard for an air conditioner to function. Um, so yeah, so some of the things we can do easily, some of the things are very difficult. They also involve a lot of cost. It also depends on the market, which is India, because we primarily are in India. If you look at our air conditioning and our refrigeration business, we kind of operate out of India only. The MEP business and all, we have international presence, but these are the major chunk of businesses that we have, and they majorly operate from India. The other thing that I've realized is, when I heard a lot of people talking about GDP and government measures, one thing, like, we were talking about building ecosystems. One thing that I was going through some few months back was, what is the connection between GDP and climate change, and how do we draw a line? And very interestingly, and this is the most, uh, I don't know, this is not a very pleasant thing to hear that, like, for example, deforestation is considered as a positive input to GDP. So cutting down a tree or cutting down multiple trees is a positive input into GDP, which is not so positive for climate change, because then how do you push your governments or countries to move towards climate change? So that's one thing. The second thing is in terms of sustainability, ESG, climate change. These are things that require a lot of collaboration. We cannot pinpoint one person to do the job because it involves a lot of people, right? So collective effort is required. The one thing that I've always found an issue is a lot of people who understand what climate change is, a lot of, if you look at the internet, if you look at all these social media apps, they will talk about, how the earth is changing, how species are going extinct, there is ocean level rise, the temperatures are kind of, they're haywire, everything. I mean, everyone knows about it, but we still find a limited, encouragement. We find, limited activity that's done, towards mitigating climate change. This is something that I've personally seen, um, which is a little bit sad, but, let's hope. And, I'm sure we have some really great minds and we can work together. This is something that I keep telling myself. But yeah, this is some of the issues that we faced. Um,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, Sid. I think this is a very important information you have given. Before going to the next speaker, I wanted to just add whatever you have said, that Rocky Mountains Institute, that RMI, along with the Government of India, means Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Earth Sciences, they have participated in world leading AC manufacturers and innovative technology companies in running the global cooling price. Persis knows this because we have discussed this before with Persis, myself, and then few other experts. So basically, in this global price, what they have a global coalition led by the government of India, along with Rocky Mountain, as I told, announced. I mean, the finalists were the Indian companies, and it is kind of international innovation competition to develop super efficient and climate friendly residential cooling solution for homes. So many companies, for example, Daikin, and then like Godrej, and then Tata, and even from some Chinese companies, and then even some Gree electric appliances companies. So, I mean, many countries they have participated, and it was surprisingly that 2 or 3 Indian companies were in the finalist. Again, they have won the prize also. So they have showcased the technologies that reduce the and eliminate refrigerants linked to the climate change, and then that advances that will be vital in number of room air conditioners. So basically, such kind of activities are going on, what I know from the industry side, and then this is really a great initiative from the industry and this one. But at this event, iConnect Industry Connect event, means what we are thinking to achieve through such kind of panel discussion, how academic people can connect to the industry people just to work in greenhouse gases, understanding the greenhouse gases, emissions, mitigations, and this thing. What Rajesh shows that how ministry is basically estimating the emissions using different techniques like top down, bottom up techniques, and then activity data and so many things. Dr. Prabir shows that how top-down modeling activities are which are using basically the emission inventory and these things. So, Miss, that's why just I wanted to link this. I will bring again Dr. Priyadarshini Karve just to tell us about the future scope of your mitigation activities. Miss, what exactly you are thinking in the future? What should be done, and is there any plan on the larger scale? How you are planning or how you wanted to go?
Yeah. So my engagement in this context has been more on a urban level rather than on an industry specific level. So I'm part of a group in Pune, for example, which we call Climate Collective Pune. And we have come up with a plan to make Pune metropolitan region carbon neutral by 2030. So that does have components for local industries to do, but the focus is that collectively the entire urban system should start moving towards carbon neutrality, which has both the local government stakeholders also have a key role to play there. So that is the kind of plan on which we are focusing. But as I said in the beginning, personally feel that, I mean, if we look at the NDC processes, a couple of European countries, I think, have put in their current NDCs that they are asking specific industry sectors to go carbon neutral, which means that those industries will have to keep a careful accounting of their emissions and report on that year to year. Now in India also, once we have all the low hanging fruit which is more under government control, like increasing renewable energy component, improving forest cover, etc., etc. As we move forward, because NDCs are there for every 5-year period, so next NDC or maybe the NDC after that will start having these components even in India, that certain industrial sectors will be pushed to go carbon neutral. Now the problem that I am seeing sitting where I am is that if hundreds and thousands of businesses suddenly have a mandatory reporting compliance on carbon accounting, we don't have enough people to do the carbon accounting, and I don't see any effort in that direction happening at all. So mitigation, I mean, it's one thing to that these are the things you do and your carbon emissions will reduce, but accounting for that, keeping a measure of that is very, very important, because these are complex environmental connects there. I mean, the refrigeration industry is a good example of this, that by shifting from CFCs to HFCs, we solved the ozone problem but contributed to the
Absolutely.
climate change problem.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
a solution may lead to some other spin-offs, and therefore do keep continuing to do accounting of what is happening because of a certain intervention is very, very important. So just going haphazardly saying that we want to do maybe rooftop solar or whatever, we are going to
Exactly.
increase tree plantation is not enough. Accounting is very, very important, and I feel we need enough people with at least a basic understanding of the principles, and therefore that is my focus specifically, that I am contributing to try and build that basic understanding of carbon accounting among college students currently, because they will get into the workforce in the next 5 to 10 years. As you said, schools, well, I feel that it will be too late if we start educating school kids, because things are so urgent now that we need transformative change in the next 10 years. So that is why we are focusing more on people who are already in the business sector or who are on the verge of getting into the business sector. That is the segment where I think we need to build capacity, build understanding. And also the points that Persis was making are also important, that while we are doing all of this, we also have to keep in mind that India going carbon neutral is not going to make even a dent in the global problem. It is the developed countries which have to go carbon neutral first. Our priority, to my according to me, should really be on how do we reduce climate vulnerability for our citizens, for our industries, for our socio-economic systems, because nobody else is going to come and help us. We have to deal with this ourselves. And there are strategies which will help us in vulnerability reduction, adaptation, and mitigation. I think those are the ones that we have to prioritize rather than just focusing on mitigation, because there is a lot of international pressure on us to reduce our carbon emissions. So a lot of I think an understanding of this global politics is also important for people in the business sector to decide what is the direction they want to take, which will be good for their customers and themselves as a business, and what kind of policies we as citizens, as businesses, as scientists should demand from our government. So, in general, increase in climate literacy, I feel, at different levels is very much the key. Those are the kind of initiatives that we are focusing on right now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Priyadarshini. I think we are overshooting the time. So I will go on the last section, the concluding remarks from the each panel members. So basically, the concluding remarks I would like to have on you're thinking about the solution. What you exactly think about this mitigation strategies, and then the GHG control, and then what are the requirement for. So from the researchers, I want exactly what are the requirement from their side, and then from the industry, what are the requirement from their side, and how we can connect. So I think two silent speakers are here. I wanted to go Shantanu just to comment on the requirement from the research side, exactly from the greenhouse gases inventory, or observation, or the modeling. What kind of improvement you think should be there so that we can closer go to research on the carbon cycle?
I feel as the inventory over the India has to be improved, as Rajiv sir already showed in his PPT that he already in the business of to estimate the all the CO2 emission or maybe the methane in each sector. And we also need some pristine observation over the India to estimate the CO2 surface fluxes over the India. That is much required. So the effort in observation over the India and all parts of the India, as the India has a various climatic region and it's very means more complex climate we face, and we have very orographic in nature. So as a modeling perspective, we need to improve our model to model our CO2 emission over the India, as well as the regional modeling, or maybe the global modeling, and to connect all sorts of modeling. And in the modeling, we also include the observation. So we need some pristine observation to contain our CO2 that we need. So the sectorial based CO2 emission. So that means we need effort to in that perspective to in the bottom-up approach to come up with a more robust estimate, and that will include in the top-down approach to give a robust estimate for India, and that will help us to understand the CO2 mitigation, which sector we can address. So recently there is one paper. So yesterday I was talking with Praveer sir. So recently there was one paper, so Bo et al. 2020, where over the China they have estimated sectorial CO2 emission based on the NO2 and CO2 ratio using the TROPOMI data. So they have done a good job to estimate and to reduce the uncertainty for each CO2 sector. So as Rajiv sir already are in the business to estimate the CO2 in each sector, so somebody can take some initiative to do this kind of work, and that will help us in reporting in global scenario, the CO2 estimation over the India, and how much we are emitting and how much we are reducing or sink rather. Thank you.
Thanks, Antanu. Prabirda, yeah, please can you give a concluding remarks? Are you there? I think he left, I guess. Okay, Vinu?
Yeah, Yogesh, I already mentioned the points already noted it. A very useful discussion. That's from
yeah. Vinu, your voice is.
Yeah, I mean to say that I have already expressed my views on this, and Prabir, Dr. Prabir already noted it down. I think let us see how these recommendations take shape.
Okay.
They were very good recommendations. Okay, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Let us. Yeah, that's no more points from my side.
Okay, fine. Yeah, Dr. CG.
Yes, I fully agree with the prayer stream of she told is that developing the manpower not only for the carbon accounting, but we also develop a manpower for the scientifically compute this carbon fluxes for optimizing the fluxes. That manpower development is a big issue. So that is one more point I added further that I left out. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So Rajiv.
So it was a privilege to listen to all the speakers, and I think I learned a lot. I would like to comment on, or I would like to make the following concluding remarks. One, I think our colleagues from the top-down modeling, they have talked about the requirement of the gridded data, and I think this is a very important recommendation that we can pass on somehow to the MOEF. MOFCC, we can like we should be able to put this in the recommendation or in the final deliberations of this meeting that this is one of the requirements. Converting the so right now the inventory, the way it is being prepared, it is not gridded. It is because we get data from the administrative divisions, and also in creating or translating this data from the administrative divisions to the grids will be a difficult exercise, but we will require some hand holding from the end users. So I think this should be put in a appropriate manner, and I think this is a very important take home message suggestion that we can put, and I can take, or we can take it to the MOFCC or the people who are involved with the greenhouse gas inventory preparation in India, so that they can at least think about it. They can keep that in mind. Secondly, I think from the carbon mitigation point, I think this is a very important suggestion that has been given by Priyadarshini madam. So that in India, mitigation is not the key. Right now, we are taking net zero, etc. And I think the same sentiment has been expressed by Paris Pilimoria also. So so the fact that we have taken a very long distance, it tells a bit that we are more concerned about the current food security, etc. But I think right now India is creating LTS, long-term strategy, 2050 document. So we are already working on a document that is going beyond NDC. NDC is 2030, 2050 document is being prepared right now. So I think this will be a very important suggestion or as a recommendation of this meeting, if this can go from someone like Priya madam, so behalf that we must prioritize those mitigation efforts which are either reducing the vulnerability or increasing the adaptation capacities of the vulnerable communities, because I completely agree with the observation of Perez that we are going to the food security problem is going to be a big problem tomorrow. It is maybe not there today. We are self-sufficient. In continuation to this, whatever I'm talking, and in continuation to what Madam has suggested, I would like to highlight this. I think some colleague has also said about soil carbon increment potential. This is a this is a key mitigation strategy that may be highlighted, that may be taken up, because it has a very strong synergy with the food security. So lot of, for example, but in soil carbon mitigation strategy, the biggest problem that we have been facing so far is the reliable baseline data on soil carbon. On soil carbon, we had a very haphazard data, very. This is one sector in our greenhouse gas inventory which is having the highest uncertainty. So, but some time back, from our Prime Minister's behalf, a very important scheme has been initiated, soil health card scheme. Even I have, every farmer has got, I also come from a farming background. I have also seen the soil card, health card from my farm. And I can tell you majority of the soil in India has been found to be highly deficient as per that health card. Some people are raising some questions on that, but that is, I think all these things can be improved. It is a periodic. So I think this soil health card initiative is something that is a very important thing that has happened to us, because it is giving us some idea about baseline carbon value that is there in certain year. The scheme started in 2016. So going forward, so I think there are some deficiencies in the process, how soil carbon is behaving, which are the areas where soil carbon is critically deficient. I think so a very concerted effort policy needs to be framed around that. And as somebody has rightly pointed out here, right now we are lacking some policy angle there. So this suggestion can be very useful from this platform, I think. Then another so I'm taking a bit of time, but kindly excuse me because I'm so excited after hearing all these things. And
Yeah, go ahead.
I also keep thinking about these things. So Priya Madam has also said that about the ecosystem restoration, just planting trees, people planting trees everywhere. So I think this message has gone down very well among the rank and file, and now everybody is aware that grassland at least is something that has not to be touched. There is a natural grassland that should not be touched. And I am very happy to inform you that I had myself got that work from on behalf of Government of India to prepare a map where are the potential locations for plantations. And the first thing I did, I just excluded those open natural grasslands from the system. So, but I think the way you framed your question was not correct, because you framed your question saying that is there any study that shows that um, these natural ecosystems, if we keep them as it is, maybe sequestering more carbon than planting trees. So planting trees gives you much more carbon, of course, if you just look at the blindly one aspect of carbon. But I think we have to be more diversified here, looking at the biodiversity, looking at ecosystem services, looking at connectivity, I think. So maybe here we can drop the carbon guard. At least here we are not able to, we should not be, I think, comparing on the carbon thing. So in this regard, what comes to my mind is that agroforestry may be a very good idea. Agroforestry may provide a good platform for integrating forestry and tree plantations, etc., and that may help India in getting the 33% goal. So much of the tree plantation should not happen outside. It may happen on the agroforestry, at least on the marginal agricultural land. We have 164 million hectare of agricultural land in India. Out of that, a very big chunk is marginal, that is not being utilized, that is not coming into the play when it comes to the food security, and that is marginal because of the lack of soil carbon, lack of other things. Maybe planting trees may improve those things. So that is, so agroforestry has to be pushed in India. And let me tell you that agroforestry has not really grown in India. Agroforestry area has remained largely stable in India for the last decade or so. So this thing has to be changed. I think, yeah, that's it. I think so.
Yeah, thank you.
I say
Thank you,
very
Rajiv. Yeah, it's a really important input. Okay, we are running out of time. So, Praveer, we need a quick comment, maybe final recommendation from your side. Maybe you are sharing a PPT, I know, to us, the recommendation slide, but you give just one a final recommendation from your side. What exactly we need it and what is the solution?
Actually, yeah, like I was also talking to Priyaji's comment before that we still need a government policy very strongly for many things. This, I mean, everything is fine, but so soil card is good for farmers, but what the farmers can do? What is the solution for them? How do they improve it? That has to come from government. Government has to give this. There is no way that people can do everything. In my hometown, like I told you the building example, because my hometown in Jhargram, which is like a now become district town, it's a very small town. We used to have all single and double story residential houses. Now they are building 7, 8 story buildings all around our house, and everybody has built their house. And then now my house is unlivable without an air condition. We can't live without air condition. This is why if government doesn't help here, nobody can help. We are out of options for my old parents to live without air conditioner today. It helps GDP, it's fine, but then it is not the way we want to increase GDP. In the Europe, today I'm calling from Toulouse in France. Here, even today, they don't have air conditioner in the rooms. Many of the hotels doesn't have even not a single air conditioner. I mean, like a cooling air conditioner. They have a heating system, no cooling. People go out and live. They have to live by the park. They have to go out of the room. And I just left a room because I could not tolerate that because I'm not used to it, to live in that heat. But then you're supposed to go out and cool yourself. And what we did in our childhood in my hometown, in village, we have to have that option. If the government does not provide this option, nobody can help us. We still want to build houses. Yes, build houses, but then we have enough space. If we can use the space wisely, we can do that. I mean, I know the population is huge. I am from that country. That's why I have a kind of, I mean, the interest what is to do, because I see on this country in different places and how they have managed things. Everything just management. We cannot leave it to the people. They cannot do anything because other person build a house next to my house. My parents cannot do anything because they have the permission from the municipality. Whether they following legally or illegally, I have no idea. How the municipality gave a 7-story building to be built next in a residential area, I have no idea. And then there's several of them. It's not one. It's several of them.
Yeah.
And so now it's our option is to break our house and move to another place. Give it to. So this is what the reality is, and I think many of you must be facing that in city, and everybody are happy to buy an air conditioner and cool them off.
Yeah.
Very few are like Milan Majumdar who want to sacrifice. Maybe you can sacrifice, but your kids will not.
Yeah, exactly.
They are not used to it. They are used to going to air conditioner in schools. We have given them that luxury. You cannot take that away. Unless you make policy in a bigger scale. I am not talking about the carbon neutrality. I am not talking about the other things. Carbon neutrality can happen, should happen in different ways. And but we need to manage our things. We do not want to leave it for too long.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say. The emissions will take its own turn and own ways if the government make policies. Yeah, I mean, like a kind of company like Voltas, I think very important in the Indian economy, and they are all the car manufacturers. So now everybody, like I when I go to India, like many of my relatives, they buy car, a big car, Mahindra, because it's a proof from the accidents. Then it's a small family, 3 people drives a Mahindra for on the city roads. Can you imagine how you are doing? You are occupying the space. You are burning fuel, and this is why you do, because we want safety on the road. But this is not the way. You have to train the people. You have to implement rules that people follow traffic rules. You can ride a small Maruti van or Maruti or small cars, so that you are still safe. People follow the rules. Lane driving. It is nobody. The people will not change unless you find them, unless you follow the implement rule. It is government who can do. Each rich country are following the rules because there is a very strong fine system on your driving license, on your on your cash. You cannot escape. There's no way you can escape. So this is how they are maintaining this. Any car can drive safely on the roads. So these are the things. His government policy. I'm not talking about that CO2 will reduce or increase in this case. I'm saying that we need to provide the facility that people can still be happy and not buy a big car, not buy air conditioner for the house. They can still live. How do you provide this infrastructure? It is possible. It was possible in India. Of course, the temperature probably has gone up by few degrees in the past, since my lifetime, 50 years. But 1 or 2 degrees will not need you to implement such things. Like you need the air conditioned car, air conditioned houses. We don't need that.
Yeah.
50 years, we don't increase so much temperature that we need this kind of other infrastructure to just live.
Yeah.
There are many people who want to just live. So that we should be able to provide them.
I think, yeah, Pravida, you are talking about very grassroots problem in India. Basically, I mean, such kind of thinking and system has to change on the large scale, on the public scale. And I know that is coming directly from your bottom of your heart. And then we also feel the same. And this is there everywhere. I mean, this is the kind of a pride that people are driving. Even in a house, we have a 3-4 cars now. And then I remember in Pune, we were not using air condition last 20 years before. Now almost 80% houses have the air condition in our area. So because of this urbanization and then unplanned activities and these things. So I understand these things are there, but government has to make a policies.
Yeah, so that's my feeling. I mean, I'm not talking about carbon neutral or anything. I don't talk so often carbon neutral in my talks.
Thanks.
Or in the enforcement of carbon neutrality in rich versus developed countries. Those debates are different. But what can we offer to our understanding? Our scientific knowledge should be able to help the citizens directly.
Yeah, I think a scientific community should make this kind of consistent right to policy makers and then this. So that's a requirement, time of requirement. I think you are attending this IPCC Geneva meeting, right? I also will be there, so we can discuss more on that.
Yeah, hopefully I will come, but I will come again. But see, in Europe it's difficult.
Yeah. Okay. So I request Persis just to give a quick comment, final recommendation, just in few lines.
Yeah, just quick comment on industry and mitigation. I think it's very critical that industry join hands with science, the science community, to ensure and also collaborate and encourage the flow of current data, upon which they can work on high-tech, new tech solutions for mitigation and the rest of it. I think that's critical. Unless industry holds hands and joins with the scientific community, and together they can be influencers for policy to the government. That's the only way that's going to happen. If you are going to rely on government to change and implement policy, it's not going to happen. We've seen that since the first start of the COP, which was in Rio. Nothing has happened because it's always consensus. So there has to be a win-win situation, and it can only be with collaboration with industry, science, and government. That's number one. Number two, and quickly I will tell all of you that all this that we are talking is excellent if we were at 350 parts per million. If we are going over 420 or 430 or 450 parts per million, and we are going to touch 2 degrees within 2040, mitigation and adaptation is not going to help at all. We have to intervene and repair the climate. And what we are doing currently is a Herculean task, is refreezing the Arctic and the Antarctic. And that is where our focus currently is. Because if the Arctic and Antarctic flips, which it already has, I don't know if many of you know, it started raining in the Arctic. And the last rains, the energy that was released was equivalent to 32,000 Hiroshima bombs. If none of you are aware of this, it's something that needs to be highlighted, because all mitigation and adaptation is going to fall away. We need to refreeze the Arctic and the Antarctic with intervention and repair. Just not the Arctic, you can do that to the oceans as well. So we are working with regeneration of ocean biomass to see that it starts sequestering, the acidic ocean starts sequestering, bringing the ecosystem of the oceans back to life, seeing that the Amazon from source becomes sink once again, curbing the permafrost from emitting methane. These are all intervention and repair, the focus. No one talks about this, and this is what we are going to highlight from now onwards, is intervention and repair, without which mitigation and adaptation has no value. Thank you.
Thank you, Persis. Thank you very much for your comment. I'll go quickly to Astrid, then Ravi, and then Priyadashini Madam. Yeah, Astrid.
Yeah, I think there's lots said, and truly it kind of builds a lot of talking points. But one thing that I've really noticed is while there's a lot of talks on renewable energy, especially for the industry, that everyone keeps telling us, which is fine, which is fair enough. But I think what also matters is, like I think someone rightly mentioned the scientific community giving us a lot of options in terms of what exactly can we do when it comes to carbon sequestration, and not just sit on one or two options. There are algae that can sequester carbon, and we've hardly really talked about. There are things that are these are like really low hanging fruits that won't really require a lot of finance in terms of funding them. That is one thing. Secondly, in terms of what I've also seen is research on climate change. I couldn't get a lot of things where a lot of funded projects are there that will help in terms of climate change. So that's one area also. I think that yeah, I don't know how much industries can help, or whom should I put the blame on. And I really don't want to play the blame game. I think each one of us has an equal part to play. This is what I really believe. And if we all work towards it, we can achieve it. Otherwise, I think all falls down and we have nothing to offer for our future generation. And that will be a biggest shame, of our life, that we had nothing to save our planet. So yes, so that's a little bit from my side. In terms of the industry side, yes, there is that we're trying to do, but there are issues which are beyond our control most of the times. It's not like we don't want to do anything. We are trying, but it's all about balancing, and that's the biggest thing when it comes to sustainability, is how you balance out everything. Because while we talk about sustainability, we also have to maintain profits. If we talk about let's all shut off our ACs and sit at home or sit out in parks, it's not really going to work. So that becomes an important thing. Once we get profits, once we get everything is balanced, then we can work on a lot of things. So that's from my side. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you, Astrid. A quick comment from Ravi, and then we'll go to Pramit and Madam.
Thank you so much. I think it is a very nice discussion, but I will just like give a comment in terms of like scientifically, just like what we are discussing, because many times we have been meetings on various things we discuss, and also I have been recently attended a few meetings with Niti Aayog that where industry partners are also coming up to discuss most of the things. Here also the same thing, that what we are discussing, that without support from the industry, I think it will be really difficult, like because we are talking about the reducing the emissions. What we have to do is that maybe in the future, if we have a meetings and then come up with the scientific and as well as the industry partners, then we can discussing about what is the solution to reduce the or we can trying to mitigate these emissions from the greenhouse gases. That is one of the immediate solutions. And also we have been also very I think in terms of the manpower, when we say that getting the or preparing the emission inventory is not so much easy to do that. Maybe we can have a more manpower is needed, and then we should also have been involved the many, or maybe we have to been getting the help from the many people, from the scientists, and then also the industries to come up with together to make a better emission inventory to improve our understanding of the emissions. Because two things we needed right now is like understanding and then the actions. First we have to make an understanding that what is our current emission strategies over the Indian region and what kind of actions needs to be taken into to reduce the elevation. So what I wanted to say that maybe it should be an collective effort from the industry partners as well as the scientific community to come together to make a proper strategies to in order to maybe given a better understanding on these GHGs, and of course that will be leading to the how we can going to mitigate these emissions. This is kind of a scientific approach. Maybe this may be good in terms of the in the future things when you do in the next meeting also. Thank you so much for a nice opportunity to share my thoughts on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. Now the final hammer, final lane, Madam Pradashni, Madam, can you just give a final comment so that after that we close the meeting?
Thank you. A couple of points that I made were highlighted by other people, so I'll not go into that. But one perhaps suggestion is that while we in environmental issues particularly, things are interconnected, as a couple of you also mentioned, and therefore actions taken with just one of the goals in mind may sometimes have negative impacts elsewhere. And that is why it's important to look at things holistically, decide what are our priorities from sustainability perspective, in the sense that we want to have a good life for people and maintain our planetary conditions so that future generations also continue to have a good life. Locally, priorities will be different, and that is why India's priorities will be different from other countries' priorities. But within India, we are such a big country with so many ecosystems, and therefore, perhaps the NDC process needs to be a bit more rooted at the grassroots level. Local actions which will be effective locally should reflect in the NDC. I'm mentioning NDC because that's a framework which we currently have to deal with climate change. But we can, of course, come up with other frameworks which are more valid for our country. But things have to, like at state level action plans or district level action plans, which take into account the local reality and what needs to happen there so as to get maximum benefits from climate change perspective and maximum benefits from people's perspective, industry's perspective. So that is the way in which the plans need to be built up, and then all of that, it needs to be collated at the national level, rather than what is happening today is we look at the international discussions and respond to the pressure points, the diplomatic pressure points in framing our national policy. So I think that way of change in thinking is perhaps something that we should all advocate.
Thank you, Madam. Pramit, just last one, and then after that we will because we are preparing the reports, and then we'll close it here.
Yes. So actually, I just wanted to add two more points. So first of all, to Dr. Billy Moria. So you mentioned about these cultivars which require less water, the rice cultivars. So actually, while preparing our National Climate Change Assessment Report in 2020, in which we had a dedicated chapter on greenhouse gases and its emission and its modeling and all. So we indeed came out of about some rice varieties, some cultivars by ICAR, which actually emit less methane and all. And that too with some practices like intermittent flooding of the field with warm water that can reduce the actual methane emission from otherwise normal rice plantation. But we could not find out any documentation of how widely they were going to be used, or we could not find out in future whether they were accepted in the farming community or adopted. So I think only while the research is important, there has to be a policy level or the government level initiative to percolate these measures among the communities, among the end users. So the wide scale implementation can only happen from this government through this government initiative or the proper planning. That's one point I wanted to make. And second point which I wanted to make, which to respond to Dr. Kadve, which Dr. Chaturvedi also pointed out a little bit, that somehow climate change is the big demon which takes all the center stage attention nowadays. And whatever we do, and in most of the cases with limited knowledge or without a proper planned pilot study, that actually overshadows everything. For example, Jethro for the biofuel, So that can be an alternative, but then again, that actually overburdens your hydrological cycle. That actually reduces your soil fertility. So before we jump into such sort of things, like another example could be the wind energy. Our power grids, at least in India, they are not, they are not actually in that stage to connect those, like the wind energies that cannot be directly transmitted using our existing power grid. So that system has to be improved. So without these studies, without a holistic and inclusive studies, I could not agree more with you, Dr. Karve Madam, on this. So we should have a holistic and inclusive study, and then only we should decide on which measure is to be taken. We should not hurry up, and probably we should not copy others. So that was the points I wanted to add here. Thank you.
Thank you, Pramit. I think it was really an exciting panel discussion, and we spent almost more than 2.5 hours, and everyone has given its contribution. And then we are preparing a recommendation. Pramit has noted down all the points. He is a reporter, and then we will prepare a recommendation from all the angles, and then taking all your comments, we will circulate to all of you. Please add so that we can forward this recommendation to the ministry. And probably what Prabhida said, that if any policy related and these things recommendation, we can put it. So it should go in the records, and then we will have further actions from the government side or policymaker side. So at the end, thank you very much for all of you for joining this meeting, giving your 2.5 years. It was really useful taking your inputs and then giving your expertise, and hope we'll in touch in the future. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yash.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.